physiology. All right, there we are. We're live just like that with the very talented, very smart, and very good Sean Foley. Sean, I'm very grateful that you've carved out time for a small podcast like mine. So we'll have a lot of fun today.
Why not, bro? It's a tricky world, right? Because you're trying to build your business and you're obviously trying to market yourself, but I don't really feel like that doesn't have much meaning and purpose to me. So whether you're the biggest podcast or the smallest podcast, I think that we're all, this game has provided me with so much. Obviously, I've had to work my ass off, but I've still had incredible opportunities because of this game. And so I think just, talking about this game with anybody who has the same passion and curiosity for it, it's kind of all of our jobs,
Yeah, and that's one reason that I find you so intriguing. As we talked about just a little bit ago, you and I have never met formally or in person. We have a lot of mutual friends. But as I watch you from afar, meaning you're 4 hours down I-95, so it's not that far. But I find you very intriguing in that you have a wide array or wide scope of interest. You don't pigeon up your hole to like, I'm a golf coach and I'm going to learn X's and O's of the golf swing and that's going to be it. You have I don't want to use this word wrongly, but like intellectual curiosity, if I could coin that phrase, that you have, you're very interested in many things. I coined myself, I just have a very curious mind about a lot of different things. Hence 360 is the name of the podcast. So we talk about anything and everything. If something can touch golf and I find someone very interesting, I try to find a way to get them on. Obviously coaches and players. So I'm very, very intrigued to have you on and have this discussion. Hope to meet in person sometime, have beer, have dinner, whatever, and just keep it going.
Of course.
One thing that I find irritating, and I've gotten to a couple of, I'll call it respectful debates on Twitter, which is, as we were talking about, is probably the worst place to do that. But it irritates me, and I'd like to get your take on it. When somebody says, well, that golfer, they just had pure talent, as if that person never worked at anything. And there was I've talked about this to a trainer who I follow, and I talked about it with Jim McLean's coming on hopefully in a couple of weeks, and he and I had what appeared to be a disagreement on that, where he had a picture of Seve hitting I think it was his 3-iron out of a bunker, and say the talent level of this, and I said, well, I might disagree, Jim. I think Seve developed that skill, and Jim got into physical predisposition and type 1A2 and fast twitch and everything, and I said I agree with that, but that somebody's born with that. So look, what was your take on that?
Well, no, I mean, yeah, I think for the most part, right, it's like what percentage of people end up with kind of a mediocre existence, right? And I think that when the word talent is used just way too often, and so they talk about Kobe Bryant and how physically gifted he was. Yeah, so he jumped like 44 inches, right? He probably had four speed. He was 6'6". All right, so how many people in the NBA can do that? A lot.
Exactly.
Right?
A lot of them. Mm-hmm.
I think in what Jim's saying, I don't disagree with either, is that, when you look at someone like Cameron Champ, he is predisposed to create incredible amounts of force. All right. So he has the ability to get to almost end range everywhere. And then at end range, he's incredibly strong. Right. So
that's a rare thing too.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. And this is, we're talking about a kid who doesn't work out much and can probably still do 22 pull-ups with just 22 wide grip pull-ups, like make it look like a joke, right? Has incredible mobility to the point that he almost looks like, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu grappler. So yes, he's predisposed to be able to hit the ball really, really far. All right. So yes, that to me would be a genetic gift. Okay.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Usain Bolt. Basically, probably not much faster than anybody else, but at 6'6", when his leg falls back to the ground, he's going to have a longer stride. So that's beneficial. and he'll create more force with his leg falling from further. Now, that being said, the ability to create force is based on being able to contract muscles. So I'm sure if we followed Usain Bolt, who is the most gifted sprinter ever, all the workouts he did, all the times he's lifting, I think, when you have the ability like I do to see a day-to-day, aspect on the PGA Tour, Justin Rose is one of the most talented players that I've ever seen. When he was 17th in the world and said to me, he said, Foles, I want to get to number one. Let's put our heads together on what that looks like and what that means. I mean, he checked every box from diet to sleep, nutrition, meditation, you name it, right? So when you see what I see, yes, of course, there's some predisposition to it. But when you look at how laser focused he got on all the things that he had control of that he could improve at, kind of low bearing fruit. I mean, that was 2 years of absolute obsession that both of us had, that all of us had on the team.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think it's easy to use the word talent, but really what you have is, when you have high level success, you have curious people who are also willing to pay almost any sacrifice.
Yeah, Doc Brett McCabe talks about that. Well, what's the price you're willing to pay? Because it's going to suck. It's not going to be enjoyable. It's not enjoyable to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day and go to the gym and then go to the range and then basically put yourself out there and say, I'm not good at this and I need to get better at it. So you take someone who's highly successful, probably has some level of comfort, and then you're going to stick them in a position where they're not comfortable at all. The ability to do that, I would have to say there's got to be some talent in that's something in the brain or in the human being that drives somebody to do that. It is, as you mentioned, they don't want to be mediocre.
It's like, who's a better example than Tom Brady? Who had probably, arguably, the least athletic combine in the history of NFL quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Without, if you've looked at Steph Curry's scouting report coming out of Davidson, not a good defender, not fast enough, not strong enough. Too small, and depends too much on the outside shot. Well, the big homie just completely changed how basketball is played. So, somebody like a Wayne Gretzky would be someone always, connected to total talent. But when you kind of look at how he grew up and how he practiced and how his dad trained him and how they looked at it together, man, he did something that everyone could do. Every single quarterback in the NFL could watch 30 hours of game film of the defense they're playing like Tom Brady did. So
exactly.
The thing is like, to me, his talent was just this idea that nothing was ever good enough. And I think when you look at it too, it's like, a lot of the GOATs have a chip on their shoulder. Even after 7 Super Bowls. I was watching Tom on the show with LeBron, The Shop, where they sit in the barber chairs.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Right? And the first question was, Tom, man, can they believe they took that guy before you in the draft? And he gets out of his chair and he says, can you believe they took that mother instead of me? I mean, he's already won, like, he's set every record and won 7, and this still bothers him.
It's still buried in the back of his brain.
So that's the whole thing. Like, with greatness, remember, that's a whole other discussion, non-duality. But if you look at duality in the sense of, like, Newton, like, you can't have pain if you can't have joy. So I just think that the insecurity that people have, which can be fuel, and that chip on their shoulder, is to continue to show people that, what they said's not true and they can do it. That's a whole different, not a lot of people have that. And then not a lot of people can have that where they net out in a positive way, because being overly concerned about, what people think about you. I mean, I think when people talk about you, they're not even thinking about you. So I think, yes, of course, there are some, fast twitch, slow twitch. If you look at great jumpers in the NBA, their Achilles inserts way higher in the lower leg than other people. They don't have massive amounts of dorsiflexion. They're almost spring-loaded. Yeah, of course. But you're not just in the NBA because you can do that. You have to play defense. You have to be able to shoot free throws. You have to be able. So when you look at a game like golf, there's so many skills, from course management to what you put in your body, to your ability to breathe, to working out, to chipping, to pitching, to bunker play, to being able to read the lie around the green, to hitting the ball far enough, to hitting it high enough. There's so many skill sets in golf that come into shooting a 69. Yeah, of course, I'd love to have the physical gifts of a Cameron Champ or a Dustin Johnson or a Tony Finau. And Tony, just winning his 4th event in his last 30, has come down to 10 feet in, which even my 75-year-old mom still works on. So, but at 5 feet, I've got a couple friends. They're 2 or 3 handicaps. They're really good putters from 5 feet in. They're not on tour. They're not much better than these guys. I mean, you could probably have one leg and one hand and learn how to hit a 5-foot putt. So I think that the real gift is the curiosity and the sacrifice, and then one's ability to understand the power of delayed gratification. And the fact that, like, when you look at something like, I don't normally quote this right, but I'm just trying to get the analogy across, is like bamboo as a grass, right? That grows 60 feet. I think in the first 2 years, I think it only grows like something like 9 to 12 inches. And then over 2 months, it grows like 4 feet. And I think, when you,
like a growth spurt,
when you look at, like, you have children?
No, not at least not that I know of.
Okay. Well, it's, it's like when you have kids and you watch them and they're a baby and they just can't do anything. You can just leave them on the couch and not even worry about it. They'll be there when you're done. By the time they become 3 years old, man, they can do thousands and thousands and thousands of things. And it seems like it comes from nowhere, but it's just 1% a day. And so I think that
compounding, like compounding interest.
You're looking at Tiger, right? Like, I mean, the guy putted in between 2 tees with his right hand, 100 putts a day, almost every day since he was 7 years old. Yeah, of course his start line's really good. So, do you know what I mean? It's not.
Yeah.
That type of stuff's not rocket science, and I think the difficulty in society now is, I can order a book last night that gets here this morning on Amazon, and so I think the difficulty is that we've made life too easy, and I think the tricky part about that, it's like, how we release dopamine into the system and what we verify to ourselves as feeling good has a lot less effort than it used to. You remember, like, in university, I remember when I used to have to write, like, my senior thesis, it would take me 10 hours to find the books in the library. I mean, I could do that on my phone now, right? And so I think it's really important for us to build self-esteem as human beings. Self-esteem comes from solving problems. It doesn't come from not having any. So, the idea of, like, a 15-year-old kid now wants to play on the PGA Tour. Well, he's just technically, he's just starting his climb up Mount Everest. And there's going to be stretches where, he'll put sunblock on, he'll have his shirt off, and then there'll be stretches at 20,000 feet where he'll be in the middle of a blizzard for 1 week. And so it's almost like climbing is the easiest part about climbing Mount Everest. It just takes an individual to, understand that what we're all trying to do is we're trying to have more endurance. And in order to have endurance, it means that I have to be able to endure. And so that's endure the difficult times, endure the times full of self-doubt, endure the times of frustration and disappointment, because to me, those are the PhDs, right? What kind of the obstacles that you face, those are directly showing you where you need to head, more so than not having. So I think the problem with the self-help world is we try to get into this kind of idea or world of, just being happy all the time. And I just don't think that that's really that's it. I'm sure when we were back in the day, our ancestors were out hunting for 1 or 2 days to get food for the tribe. It probably wasn't totally enjoyable.
No, not some of the terrain and the elements and everything else. And
life is a beautiful thing, but life is hard. And I think that we need to accept that and understand that. And then, figure out if you're coaching golf or you're helping a friend out with some of the issues they have in their life, there's a true principle of hitting the ball straight in golf. And that principle is that, now I understand there's a couple ways to hit it straight, but just for sake of making this point, if the face and path are 0 at impact and you hit it close to the sweet spot, then you will hit a straight shot. That's a principle. So if someone's saying, hey, if you get the face 5 degrees close to the path, the ball will fade. I mean, I get it, how you can see it on a TrackMan. You can heel a driver enough that it shows that that's the case. But the point is that people who slice it have a face that's open to the path. People who hit it high tend to have a lot of loft at impact and velocity. Those are mathematical truths. So when it comes to performance, when it comes to kind of brain health, I don't like the word mental health, because mental health as a word to me almost establishes like there's something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only thing that's wrong with us is we grow up in a world of mind control and domestication and indoctrination. And by the time we're 12 or 13, we have so many issues with ourselves as has been presented to us by parents, teachers, and relatives. Whereas when we were 4, we didn't have any of those things, right? So what happens is, as we move on and we create this narrative in our head, I am this, that's when life gets real difficult.
Yeah, as you mentioned, young kids. Now, I don't have kids, but my niece is 3 years old, and they live about 150 yards across the park. And to watch the development of a young child, where they're curious and they will go do something and they will learn very quickly, as opposed to saying, no, don't do that. And now it's like that. As I watch her, if you tell her that, her brain tries to process it, like she doesn't understand. Don't do that. She just understands doing something.
She's like, hold on, I'm here for one reason. And I'm here to scream and be loud and suck the marrow out of life. And now you want me to act like you? So that's like 80% of the time, the issues that we have with how kids behave just comes from our inability to accept that that's exactly where they are at. That's what they process. That's what they're playing, right? The amount of education that comes from just playing. And then when they're playing, we're like, okay, you're affecting my environment because you're too loud and you're getting paint all over the table. And they don't even, that's what they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. As you worked with a lot of the best players in the world, how do you, when you started doing that, if we back up a number of years ago, if I remember, you had Sean O'Hare and Hunter, Justin Rosen, and obviously Tiger came along. How do you separate from being a fan of these players to all of a sudden now you're in front of them and they're relying on you to fix their game? There's got to be some sort of separation in your own mind, instead of just being in awe, like, wow, these guys and these girls are unbelievable. Now I'm the one responsible for making them 1% better.
Yeah. I was completely a fan of all those guys before I met them. And I think that, when they come to you, they don't come to you because they're playing well.
Mm-hmm.
And really, Hunter Mahan hitting a short right block and the other 1,000 people who had the same issue, it's pretty much the same thing, isn't it? So I think you just have to separate. Like, basically, a tour player's bad is just better than everyone else's bad, because golf is, I think the Hall of Fame is more measured by how good your bad was than how great your great was, because all these guys and girls, when they're great, like, people don't even know what to say in an interview after they shoot 61, but they know what to say when they shoot 80. Their interview takes 40 minutes. So I think that you just have to remember that, a celebrity has been made that by society, whereas that celebrity is still just a human being just like you. And I think that, when you have the opportunity like I've had to meet, celebrities and movie making and CEOs and all these different people, you realize that, everyone is confused on how to be the perfect husband or the perfect dad. Like, it's all the same, right? This is just the fact that someone's better at golf than me isn't really going to have me put them that much on a pedestal. I think someone who's been a social worker for 35 years, I put people like that on a pedestal, right? Because that's a real thing. So yeah, that never really, I guess I just in my mind using imagery so much, like in trying to envision my career in my head and how much I meditated on it. I feel like when all that stuff started to kick off for me, I was quite comfortable in it because I'd just seen it so many times. I was so used to it in my vision that when it happened, yeah, I was super excited, but I knew what I knew, and I knew how hard I worked, and I knew given the opportunity, that it's science, but it's not rocket science. So, very rarely at a PGA Tour level, a player who's hooking it isn't hooking it for one of 8,000 reasons. There's not many reasons. You know what I mean? So,
yes.
But yeah, that's a good question, but I don't think my heart rate even has elevated, that much. Sure, I've had some crazy, nervous Sundays and things like that, but that's kind of what makes you feel alive. I mean, you go through so much disappointment in golf as a coach. Last week I've got 2 girls on the LPGA. I've got 1 on the European Tour. I've got 4 on the PGA Tour. And so I'm pretty much guaranteed by Sunday to, I remember, Scott Hamilton, Pete?
Yes.
So Scott Hamilton.
Yep. He used to work at Harbortown a long time ago when I first moved here.
That's my guy. I love Scotty. And so Scotty did a post one time. It was really funny. And it was so true. Is on Instagram, I think he had 5 guys that week, and they'd all made the cut. And that happens sometimes, but it's pretty rare. And so he took a screenshot of their scores, and they weren't all, number 1, but they all made the cut. Which is probably harder to do now than it's ever been on the PGA Tour. And he said, I want to thank these 5 guys for all making the cut so I don't have to spend the rest of the weekend thinking of how shit I am at coaching.
That's very, very true.
That's the truth. Now, look, I mean, as a coach, I charge my players 5% of what they earn on the golf course, and the caddies 8%. So we're 13% of every win, and we're 13% of every miscut. So at the end of the day, the ownership and responsibility at the highest level, the players who have the most success understand that, right? So that's important.
Do you think it's right? Yes. Do you think, because you've been on both ends of this at the highest levels, that blaming the coach for the downfall of a player or the lack of success is there, but giving the coach the accolades if the player has success really aren't so much there. And usually coaches, and you deflect to the player because they do the work and they put the work in. But then the coaches get all the negativity if the success isn't there and a player's been working with them. That doesn't seem like a very fair. But I guess it's just part of the industry.
But fair is just not a word I use, bro.
Yeah, it's probably a wrong word to use.
It doesn't matter, right? I think the most important. How many is that? A, C, B, T. The most important 10 letters in the English language is acceptance, right? So it's like, okay, what do I have control of? So my dad used to say, well, he's still alive, but people say, how you doing, Jerry? And he'd say, everything I have control of is great, and everything I don't is a disaster. Right. Or everything I have control of is fine, and everything I don't have control of is great. So I think when you can start to like really, really work on that, almost like you go to the gym and you want to increase your bench. Well, just doing chest exercises isn't just the only thing you can do to increase your bench, right? There's other things you can do, but you got a bench,
right? And
so as long as you know, like, okay, what do I have control over as a coach? I have control over trying to create practice and creating environments. I have control over the understanding that we're trying to have between one another. But I mean, as soon as they tee off, I don't have the control over the decisions they make. I don't have control over wind switches. I don't have control over slow play. I don't have control over almost anything really, right? So it's when people tell me they're a control freak, then I just know those people are guaranteed to have a life that's pretty miserable, because it's just not possible. It's a giant illusion, right? So fair or not, like, you know, getting beat up on a daily basis for coaching Tiger Woods. I mean, I wasn't naive. I mean, I was dealing with a guy who was 9 or 10 months, you know, post us finding out about everything that happened in his life and his divorce, and he's going through courts with custody. And so, I mean, I always knew I was going to be compared against 2000, right? And so if I was ever upset about, you know, the criticism and all that, I would just tell myself, look, bud, you're responsible for this, because you could have said no. You could have. So I invited it. So as it turns out in life, when it comes down to things with like the brain and the mind and how we create reality and permeate kind of our existence, 99% of the time, if you can dig deep enough, you'll realize that almost every problem you have is a me problem. And so when you realize that the problem doesn't really exist outside of you, even if it seems like that, I think when you realize that you're responsible for the way that you feel, but you also don't control how you feel, because feelings kind of change like the weather for no reason whatsoever, life just becomes a lot easier. It doesn't make it easy, but it's easier, because if I keep thinking that all these things outside of me are the reason that I'm struggling, then I'm going to be struggling forever. So yeah, I wouldn't. I just look at that as part of the, you know, I just look at that as part of the job, right?
You have had, and some people who would criticize you or have criticized you say, well, you know, Sean gets these really high profile players that they get better, but then there's a separation or they break up or they go somewhere else. I say, slow down. First of all, the guy is absolutely phenomenal, or these players wouldn't be going to him. You know, anyone who's teaching at the tour level, or a tour player comes to them and trusts their livelihood with that person, is very, very good. They're elite in the world, first of all. So don't go trying to knock somebody because you're mad at yourself because you're not doing what you need to do to get there. Second of all, that is a very interesting dynamic that I have not taught players that have had full-time card. I've try to help guys get there, and girls. So I guess the curiosity question I have is, that has to be a very fine line that you're walking, and you've had long relationships with a lot of your players. So what is it that causes a separation or a breakup?
Oh, there can be tons of there can be so many things. I mean, but the thing about relationships, right, is that, you know, relationships are just difficult, period. Like, gosh, if you were, I mean, we're not even guaranteed to have a relationship with our wife or kids for our whole life. You know, you got to work at relationships, right? Like, communication is important, and people don't know how to communicate. And I think what happens is you know, a lot of people have a hard time confronting things. And so they're non-confrontational, but they carry the confrontation within themselves. And so, I think when you're having success, things are going good. When you stop having success, I think, like, Rosie and I were together for 11 years, and we were always able, when we started to struggle, to kind of pivot and get back to like the principles. And then, you know, we're always told, and, you know, growing up, don't do business with friends. Well, it's really hard to coach someone 20 times a year all across the world and not have a friendship.
Yeah, it's a lot of time to go.
At some point, it's going to be over, right? And when that's the case, the thing for me, from Tiger to Lydia to Rosie to all the people, Danny Willett, the people that I work with that I don't work with now, I mean, I still talk to them on a weekly basis. It's just business, right? And so you do the best with what you can while you can. But you know what? Even the greatest market expert in the world is going to be down when the market's down. There's just no way around it. So you just have to accept what the game is and, make the most out of it while you can.
Yeah, and I don't ask that question to try to make you look bad for anyone out there that says, well, you want to golf through. I know you wouldn't take it that way. If anyone out there listening who's a fan here and say, well, this guy's trying to, no, I'm asking that because you are a very high profile instructor and you have gotten to the level and you've experienced that. Oh, yeah. And I haven't, and I know a lot of coaches I haven't. So that was some of the questions as I asked some people, what would you like to know from Sean?
As imperative as anything is how you're able to, those things are guaranteed, right? So how are you able to handle that? And I think when you know what your purpose is and you have meaning behind what you do, as long as you continue to focus on your purpose and your meaning, you'll be fine, because you're, like I said, you're permeating reality nonstop, and reality based in itself is impermanent. So what is real today will not be real tomorrow. So I just think that when you want to get to this level, you're dealing with high achievers. It's just a different thing. So for people who haven't done it, I mean, that's the whole thing. People like a Butch Harmon or Scott Hamilton or Dana Dahlquist or Claude or Drew Steckel. I've never been criticized by anyone who does my job. It's just by people watching. And look, they have the right they can say whatever they want. But I mean, so many articles that came out over the years, I've never even met the person who did it. So from 30,000 feet, they're looking down and going, oh, this is what he's like, and this is what he's doing, right? So it is, it is what it is. People build you up, and you only fall as low as you climb high. And so for me, the game has created a lot of humility within me. And I find that the golf swing is quite simple. I just think that the golfer is difficult.
That's for sure. How do you, when you're working with players at that level, because some of the ones that I've had they're playing now, not at the tour level yet, PGA Tour level, but they have a lot of ability, or they've gotten to the level they are doing things that their way. And then you're sitting there, and so they come to you because they're not getting to where they want to, and they want your help. When you know what they have to do 100%, and they're resisting you because they have to give up that comfort level and what they're used to doing to get better, how do you get them to buy in when you can sense or you feel or you watch that they really are not buying in because they're afraid to take that first step into the unknown for them?
I don't seem to have that struggle. It's like I know what I need in my life and the people that I want around me in my life. So I'm going to give my experiential, my knowledge and of the theory of the golf swing and of human movement and what have you. And so, I'm going to give them what I think is something that they need to move in that direction to make themselves more consistent or more efficient. And if they're just, if they're not into it, you can tell pretty early if you should be in that relationship or not. I mean, the same as with relationship with friends or when we were, when I was single, there's kind of an unseen frequency and an energy that's definitely real that's there between two people. And I think when you vibrate at the same level, when you kind of resonate with each other, it's kind of the unseeables, but they're very real. It's a very real thing. So for me, it's like take it or leave it. And I want to know right away if it's going to work or not, or are we just going to beat our heads against the wall for 3 months while we're kind of on a honeymoon to really find out 3 months later who I'm really working with, right? So, yeah, I don't, I could go to the doctor and he can say, hey, you know what? You have this issue with your knees. You need to really build up your vastus lateralis and your VMO. Well, then it's just up to me to go and do it. So I go back to the doctor and I say, hey, you know what? It still hurts. And he's like, well, have you been doing what I told you? No, I haven't done any of it. Well, all right then. So but that's okay. But that's why we charge 5%, right? Is because they still have to go and put all the effort in. But I think in the first couple lessons, like, for example, I started with Michael Kim after he lost his card. And when Michael came to see me last October, you know, he's kind of trying to bow his wrist and get open and hit this little fade. But Mike's like the #1 amateur in the world, almost with a no divot high, like flip draw. So there's no way that could have been bad, even if it didn't look great on video. So it's, you know, when you're trying to, you know, like fish, a fish isn't going to spend, well, almost most fish aren't going to spend any time out of the water. They're going to die because a fish swims, right? And a bird flies. So if you kind of hit a high sling draw, when we're really into out and shallow at impact, the chances of you and you're #1 amateur in the world, the fact that you're now trying to hit a no face rotation fade, which, by the way, there's no such thing as no face rotation. So when people talk about, you know, how stable the club face is, yes, there's slower and higher rates of closure, but even the slow ones seem really fast when you look at absolute rotation. So he's just not, you know, he's basically a carnivore who's just eating vegetables. Well, of course he's going to be powerless. So with someone like Michael, it was kind of like, hey, we're going to hit sling hooks until we get that right shot out of your mechanics. And then over time, it'll be out of your mind as well. But we got to stop hitting it before we start. Like, the competency has a lot more to do with it than the confidence. So how I feel every day is going to change. But as long as my skills are competent, then I'll be fine regardless of how I feel. And so I think that's kind of it. Like, we got to where we hit like a pretty decent hook. And then even with the fear of water on the right or OB on the right, we just kind of couldn't hit it over there, even if he was scared of it. So this isn't really about thinking. Like, this isn't about thinking better. It's I don't think positive thinking helps, but I know that negative thinking hurts. But, you know, if my face is 5 degrees open to my path, you know, being positive about it means it's just still going to positively go way right. You know, so we don't need to think we're better. We just need to be better. You know?
Exactly. Yes. The issues I've had were more because once someone's playing pro golf, they're coming to you and they probably got a taste of it and they realize that, wow, at this level, they're really good. I can't fake my way through it anymore. Most of that has come from me through kids, either very good juniors going to Division I or playing college, or through their college experience that they don't want to, you know, that young rebellious that they think they know the answers. And I even had one of the students after like the third time that we went through a couple of weeks of him not wanting to listen. He goes, God, you're always right. I hate when you're always right. And I said, well, you're the beneficiary of me being right. So it's a good thing that I'm right when it comes to your game. But it's like he just wanted to prove that he could do it his way.
Yeah, and I think,
I would
100%,
let him go do it.
No, 100%. It's like, you know, I mean, got to remember, like, almost every player that I've worked with on tour, except for Cam Champ and Mike Gligic, I started working with Mike when he was 12 and Cameron when he was 15. Even if I started with Lydia Ko and she was 55th in the world, she was still within her. She was still the #1 player in the world at 17. So when we get back to #3 in the world, I mean, that's what we should do. She should never be bad at golf, right? It's like with Rory. What's Rory dropped to the worst ever? It's like, what, 15? Like
something like that.
15.
Something crazy.
But the thing is, it's not just golf that people have going on. There's so many other things that they have going on. Like when you get college golfers who go and they have a bad first year. I mean, it's not always the case, but it happens more often than you realize, is because now they've got to do this stuff on their own, get to class on their own, wake up at 5, go to weight training, do this, do this, do this. It's the first time they've ever been on a team with 7 other people that they now can compare themselves to. Comparison is poison. So it's tricky, but that's just a growing pain. So there's, you know, physically having a 14-year-old and 11-year-old, you know, their knees get sore, their ankles get sore. It's just their growing pain. So there's there's basically no way to grow without pain. And pain is what shows us that we're actually alive and that things matter. So I think, how you frame it and how you form it in your head, I think Bobby Womack, when he won the Grammy, and they asked him, he had like a really difficult life. And they said, Bobby, you're here. And he says, yeah, man, you got to go through it to get to it. And so I think everyone wants to get to it, but they're not really willing to go through it. And
yeah, what are you willing to pay to get there?
You're not going to climb Mount Everest and not get frostbite. Like, you can't. You can't. So you better not be up there at 25,000 feet saying, oh my God, I can't believe I have frostbite. I mean, it's what it is, right?
It blows my mind. I sit there and watch those shows, climbing Everest and all this, and I look at my girlfriend and I say, you can't be of right mind to know that you're going up 25,000 feet, and the chances of you dying or losing fingers or toes or your nose or what have you because of the frostbite and the elements and the I don't know how people can. There's no way I would want to do that. I mean, it's intriguing to me.
I think there's the world-class climbers who are like world-class golfers, right? That's all they want to do. Their idea of like, if they die at 30, it's not tragic to them. What's tragic to them would be not climbing because they wouldn't be living.
Not taking the chance, yeah.
I just think that, as much as it's a physical thing of climbing this whole thing, I just think that what people realize is it's just the limit. Like when you look at how, like the only limit that we have as human beings is the one, that we bestow upon ourselves. So I think when you look at like Navy SEALs or SAS or Unit 16 in Israel or Spetsnaz with the Russians, the guys who sign up for that are all pretty decently athletic, decently smart, decently tough. And then they make the training impossible. So the whole goal of the training is to get you to quit. And so at the end of the week, whoever's left is called special. So do you know what I mean? That's
yeah, it's designed to weed out, to eliminate the for whatever reason you can't make it. They don't care. You didn't do it.
We are dumping $6 million into each SEAL. So we've got to know, and then you look at how they do. You look at like how people practice, right? People typically practice what they're good at. I was at a junior camp this week with a bunch of kids from Canada, all fantastic kids down here, and it was incredible just to sit back behind all of them and just observe how much time they were looking at their phone, how much they were just talking. And sure, look, they're coming from like sub-zero temperatures. They're in Florida. And I'm glad that they're enjoying themselves. But then, you look at the end of the tournament at the kids who succeeded, and they're the ones who were like very to themselves, almost the appearance that they were rude. Because they were, it's not that you're practicing. Yeah. You have to be optimally at a certain level of focus and concentration to be able to lay down the learning. So it's, you could kind of look at that range right there and know who's probably going to make it and who wasn't going to make it. And that's fine, because I tell kids all the time, you don't have to tell me you want to be on the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour. If you're able to play golf well, get to a scratch handicap level, and one day you become in sales or you get into business, look, being a scratch handicap is only going to help you. Because as you know,
yeah, big time.
We love good golfers. Because I think people admire what they're not. And so it's just going to be beneficial that you get to play a game where you get sunlight, you get to continually make decisions and learn from your mistakes. And I think that's why golf is just the ultimate microcosm of life. It's the exact same thing. I mean, when push comes to shove, you can really only depend on yourself. So it's great that you have support, but when you're standing there in the middle of fairway on 18 into that left pin at Augusta on Sunday, there's nothing I can do for you at that point. Right?
Right. Exactly.
And not to say that I would know what to tell you anyways.
Yeah, because there's not a whole lot of people walking the planet that have been in that situation.
If it's 7, maybe just take 8 and back foot it and just please take a divot. Like, in this moment, let's get to 1 + 1 = 2, right? So, yeah, it's all fascinating. And I think the thing with it is that you know, it's very difficult in our job to get bored because it's so challenging and it's constantly evolving and it's constantly, you know, it's constantly changing. But yeah, as regards to criticism, or I don't even think it's my business what another person's opinion is of me, because until they spend a week with me, just literally with me the whole day, from breakfast through my coaching, through being at sports with my kids. At the end of that week, if they still want to write the same article, they can. But you can't really get that concerned with people who have never met you. You can't, right? There's just a level of maturity that you have to have. And some people can do it and some people can't. Coaching out there on tour, over the last 17 years, it's been a revolving door of people who, you know, you start out the year in Palm Springs and you see a bunch of new guys, and pretty much by, you know, April, they're not really there anymore because it's tricky, right?
Yeah, I remember the first time I locally played I was leading the Hilton Head Open. This was before I went and took my shot at fame and glory, and a local reporter was new, and they quoted me completely ass backwards of what I said. And I used to play a lot of golf with the Messier family. You know, you being Canadian, Mark, you know who Mark is, obviously. And I asked Mark one day, I said, this damn reporter they said exactly the opposite of what I told her. I said, how do you deal with this? You've obviously dealt with it long enough. He said, I don't give two shits about what any reporter says about me. And it's like, it just kind of clicked. It's like, it's that simple. Why are you going to care when there's all these people writing? You don't have any control over that.
Like, you know, when I was, one of the like non-negotiables with my dad was that we had to watch Peter Jennings with my brother, and I had to watch Peter Jennings at 6 o'clock with my mom and dad before we had dinner. Non-negotiable. Well, Peter Jennings used to just report the news. Now you can turn the TV on all day from the right and left wing and watch them create the news. And so that's
it's awful.
That's the whole thing. So I mean, I've been quoted in interviews I never did, and then had to spend 2 months being guilty till proven innocent. And you know what? Once it's out there, man, it just spreads. So you kind of just have to sit there and just be okay with that. And
you know what? You just accept it's going to happen.
It doesn't really matter, right? Like trust me, I'm not spending any time thinking about that.
I want to ask you, because you have the rumor is a very cool training device out, but I want to touch on, because we just had, Andrew had his coach camp, he and Terry put it on. I know you were a presenter at that in the past, and Mike Adams, also known as the Godfather, and you guys are doing the Sportsbox AI. How has he helped you at all in your coaching, being that he's Mike Adams?
I mean, I've known Mike for a long time. He's always been very supportive of me. I think my influence have just been so many people, and it extends so far outside of golf, right?
Which is what we were talking about before we came on.
About Mike when I was younger is that, you know, he was. I used to have this shirt that said, "Your opinions are no match for my facts," right? And so the fact that, you know, Mike, who's Mensa smart, like crazy smart, and Terry's one of my oldest friends that I have in golf instruction, Terry Rolls. Terry and I have always been just not right together, both outside the box. We studied NLP. We've done a lot of different things that we both have in common.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I think at the end of the day, you know, the fact that they were trying to identify, you know, use more science, I think was always massive as far as I was concerned, right? Like, I've always wanted to know why. Like, when I was a kid, it was like, why is the sky blue? Why is this, that? Why? I like to know why something is. I don't like to be told what it is. And so, you know, Mike's probably forgot more than most everyone know. But, you know, Chuck Cook's been a big influence on me, Butch Harmon, Bob Tosky, Andy Plummer. There's just been so many influences on me. But then, you know, my influence as well, they go into, you know, Tom Friedman wrote The World is Flat, and he's an op-ed journalist for the New York Times. He's massively had a huge effect on me. People like Nelson Mandela have had a huge effect on me, Mother Teresa. coaches in other sports.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've studied as much as I could about Coach K and Phil Jackson and Scotty Bowman and Alex Ferguson, right? Because really what's happening, right? You're just dealing with ordinary people who are doing things at an extraordinary level. And we're all capable, right? Like basically, if you're a human being on this planet, then you have this unbelievable complex brain and this incredible, beautiful body. And like I said, the only limit that we really have is ourselves. Now, I understand there's socioeconomic limits and things like that. But there's also proof of people who showed us that their limit was themselves. So I have empathy. I have empathy, but I don't really think it's about self-belief, and I don't think it's about confidence, and I don't think it's about being patient. I think the whole key is having meaning and purpose.
That's some very good advice right there. That's anyone listening. That's worth the free admission that they get to listen to you on this podcast. This
talk, and I could see one of the people in there that I kind of knew using anonymous names over social media and stuff, and they were bashing me. And I said, and for anyone out there who think I'm a fraud, I said, you don't have to tell anyone because I feel like I am half the time. But that
kind of cut their legs off from under them.
There's days I feel like the greatest dad in the world, and there's days I feel like I'm failing my kids massively. I mean, at the end of the day, as long as I provide for them, love them, and support them, that's what my job is. That's it. So my meaning and purpose with my kids is to ensure that they have knowledge, ensure that they have experience, let them know that I'm always there for them, and provide food and shelter for them. That's the face, path, and angle of attack of parenting. You know, that's the principles to me. So I think that it's a lot. Life is difficult, but it's a lot easier to manage when you kind of define, okay, this is why I coach. So I don't coach because I get followers on social media. I don't coach so my bank account gets bigger. Those would be tentacles of subsidiaries of why I do it.
You got just about 5 minutes. I'll do emergency 9. We'll run through 9 questions. Okay. All right. So you're from Canada, so originally, so we'll do the President's Cup, and you were on the President's Cup team. Your walk-up song to the first hole, since I know you're a music buff. You like a lot of different genres of music.
That's like the hardest question in the history of mankind right there. I mean, if I was in the President's Cup, so that would mean I'm better at golf than I am. Probably "The World Is Yours" by Nas, or maybe even "Triumph" from the Wu-Tang Clan, right? I mean, you know, like just think of that. Just think of the start of that song, right? When the RZA drops the beat, it's the perfect name is to call it "Triumph" because it sounds like some Marcus Aurelius in Gladiator. Yeah, 100%. So that would be that. That would be a tough one though. That would take me months to figure out.
More so than the captain trying to figure out what clothes everyone's going to wear.
That would be easy for me. I like clothes.
All right. Best golf movie: Happy Gilmore, Tin Cup, or Caddyshack?
No, Caddyshack.
Yeah, me too. It's got to be an era thing.
Yeah, but no, it's not even an era thing. It's just like to me. It's the best. Whenever I get young juniors who haven't seen it, I'm like, that's your homework. You got to watch Caddyshack.
Go home and watch it. Report back to me tomorrow. Yeah. You drive in McDonald's. What's the first thing you're ordering?
Water. I'm not eating at McDonald's, bro.
Me neither. That's why I wanted to see what you said on that one. I was very curious.
Water, and then the water would probably be a Coke or a Pepsi product and be at about 3 at about a 3 in a pH level and not hydrate me at all anyway. So I'm not doing well at McDonald's.
You could play one course the rest of your life. Where are you going to play?
One course the rest of my life.
I know you've seen a lot of them, so I thought that was
probably St. Andrews. I'm nostalgic like that. Plus, at St. Andrews, you can kind of spray it all over and still shoot a good score. So I'll be fine with it. If it comes down to just hitting punch shots with no spin all day, I can play that game.
You're there. That's you. Yeah. You got that one covered. Let's see. Most used app on your phone.
Most used app On my phone, probably Sportsbox AI.
I was wondering if it was going to be that one. 'Cause I know that you guys have been working on. That's very cool. I've got to get into
That's
that some
incredible.
more.
Yeah,
It looks awesome. It's like
it's incredible.
It's like, why would you ever use anything
It's
else?
incredible. Like with the thing that I've done with Dave, as far as how we're going to help people's wrist structure, it's, if you followed my career, you see I've never been paid or endorsed to do a training aid ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had many opportunities, but I just couldn't see myself next to the training aid because I just didn't think that it was helpful. And as far as golf goes and investments, I never invested in anything in the golf market. But when I spoke to Jihei about Sportsbox, and then knew the people connected to it and how impressive everyone was, I couldn't say no to it. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to using that some more. Your Mount Rushmore of coaches, your top 4 coaches, and that doesn't have, that's not just golf, but across the spectrum of coaching, because I know you studied a lot of them.
Well, I just would use golf, I guess.
Okay.
I would say Butch Harmon, Chuck Cook, Mike Adams, Mac O'Grady. I mean, I don't know if you call Mac a coach.
But I think what he did for coaching revolutionized it to a large extent.
100%. Yeah.
So yeah, I would agree with you that his influence on the coaching
guys
profession.
Like McLean have been amazing. I mean, that guy just loves it, eh? Like, he just loves it. Yeah, there's so many. I think there's so many, but I mean, at the end of the day, you realize like Phil Jackson had Shaq and Kobe and had Michael Jordan. Right. So I think you're only as good as the people you help too. Right. So there's a lot of,
they go hand in hand.
There's a lot of people out there who are better at teaching beginners than I am. There's great coaches and everything. And I think just because a coach is on the PGA Tour, that doesn't mean that there's not great coaches out there who don't coach on tour. It's not, I've spent half of my kid's life away from them. It's not for everybody.
No, it's I know, talking to Andrew Rice, he said one of the reasons he didn't want to go back on tour was he wanted to sleep in his own bed. And, he had his 2 boys here and, his wife and his family and his friends. I get that. It takes a certain individual to want to do that.
Yeah. And then you just got to be able to, you just also have to be able to just get punched in the face and keep fighting. Like it's definitely not for everybody.
Hey, everybody. Sorry for that short, abrupt ending there at the end. We ran into a little technical difficulty with the recording. And as we tried to work through that, Sean gave us more time than we originally allotted for. So we were very thankful to him for that. And unfortunately, he had to get going, so we couldn't finish off the Emergency 9. That's one of the most fun parts of every podcast, just to kind of have a little peek into the mind of what all our guests are thinking. However, we will have all of the links that we discussed in the summary. In particular, as soon as Sean launches his training aid website, we will, of course, have a link to that as well. So be sure to check all those out, as well as all the great stuff that Sean is doing online, his website, his social media, and all those other things as well. So thanks for tuning in another episode, and we'll check you out next time.